The Epstein class has been ruling us for decades, but no longer. Everybody associated with seeking to cover up the truths in the Epstein affair, everyone associated with trying to make people look at Russia instead of Israel and the CIA, everybody who ever cavorted with Jeffrey Epstein, took his hospitality, took his money, took his plane to his island, and defiled the innocence of young girls and boys, will never work again. They'll never work again unless you're all stupid, unless you all are prepared to be ruled by the Epstein class. They'll never work again. Donald Trump's acting as if none of this is happening. He keeps giving press briefings. I mean, is he ever doing anything other than giving press briefings? Does Donald Trump ever actually sit down and think? I'm not going to suggest that he sits down and read, because we all know he's never read a book in his life. Never written one either, but that's another matter. Donald Trump, in his incessant, ceaseless press briefings, is acting like this, none of this is happening, and hoping that the complicit media, which is so utterly compromised by the whole Epstein affair, will go along with his pretense that none of this is happening. But on social media, there is a deluge, a tsunami of releases, of analysis.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the most dangerous combat sport in the world, American politics. And once again, I'm Ted King, your host for tonight. We're going to be talking about something that I think is very, very important when it comes to the Jeffrey Epstein file situation. Thus far, here in America, nothing has. We got they have released the files, and of course there are some talks about certain portions of the files being overly redacted, and some say that some of them, some of the portions of the file um, have not been redacted, but exposes a lot of the victims. Obviously, though, there's still in America a lot of covering up of who the players were involved in the Epstein files, and so there's a lot of things going on, of course, here in America with the players. But we're not going to talk about that today, because we want to get what I want to show is that there must be the beginning of these cards. For example, for the domino effect to happen, there has to be a very big player that must fall before the domino effect starts to happen. Okay, and so today, um, a lot of things have happened, not here in the United States, but over there across the pond in the UK. So uh, this is a video that we're about to look at a little bit. It's going to be about Prince Andrew's being arrested in the UK, and so it's an analysis by David K. Johnston on the arrest of Prince Andrew, its implications for Donald Trump. That's what we're. This is what this when I say the domino effect, and broader concerns about authoritarians, national security, and constitutional violations. All right. So here are the key points, which includes Prince Andrew's arrest was handled unusually aggressively with a large police presence and no warning, signaling the Crown prosecutors' confidence in their case and aiming to pressure others with Epstein ties to cooperate. So this is the domino effect that could be the beginning of the crumbling of things that's going on here in America, right? Because right now, there's a lot of, I'm quite sure there's a lot of uh, tensions going on, but nothing has actually toppled over. So anyway, we're going to be further talking about the charges focus on official misconduct and national security breaches, leaking state secrets to Epstein. So it's getting big when they start talking about leaking state secrets to Epstein. Not sexual crimes, giving prosecutors stronger legal leverage under the UK's Official Secrets Act. So this is not just, not so much sexual crimes, but the leak, because once again, yeah, we have this talks about this Epstein thing, and it's talks, about sexual situation, but the main thing is money. And what happened as far as how they're able to tap in to get the money. So that's basically what's going on here. So Johnson suggests that this is part of a larger strategy to expose powerful figures connected to Epstein, including Trump, and warns that British authorities may have more evidence than publicly known. Okay. Yeah. So in other words, it's been hushed. Not a lot of talk about it, but they know some things that's going on that's not being reported here in the United States, because this is nation. This is internationally wide, right? It's not just isolated to the United States. This is an international uh, situation. With what was going on with these Epstein files. Okay. So anyway, he draws parallels between Trump's uh, rhe- rhetoric and actions, such as targeting critics, planning mass detentions, and undermining elections, and authoritarian regimes warning of potential purges and erosion of democratic norms. So basically saying that this is going to be Trump is trying to dismantle democracy, which is what we what we're seeing. Okay, so so it's gonna we're gonna touch on overpriced federal warehouse accusations allegedly benefiting Russian oligarchs. Now that's the key right here, right? And Trump's threats to suppress free speech via social media purges, direct directing the First Amendment violations. Right? This is sobering, evidence-based warning about the convergence of corruption, power, and the fragility of democratic institutions. Okay, so this is what we're going to, hear in this video.
See you.
David, give me some thoughts on this Andrew revelation of the day.
So, a couple of weeks ago, King Charles threw his brother out of the royal family. And at that point, at least to me, it was quite clear that something was coming, that he wanted him to be disassociated. The last time an actual royal was arrested was King Charles I, the namesake of the current king, in 1647. And 2 years later, he was beheaded. Now, the former Prince Andrew doesn't have to worry about that fate. But the person who should be most worried beyond Andrew about what happened is Donald Trump. And I want to explain why. First of all, the local British police who arrested Andrew did not do what you normally do with a white collar criminal, what you would certainly do with a royal or even a former royal. You call them up on the phone and say, "We need you to come down to the police station." You might even call their lawyers and have the lawyer bring you to the police station. They showed up with 8 carloads of cops and they grabbed him. No warning, no notice. They put him in a cell like everybody else. This is a tactic designed to send a signal, not so much to Andrew as to other people, that we've really got something. We know we have him so solid, we're not worried about any blowback. Our case is not going to fall apart. And if you have reason to be concerned about a connection with Epstein, you need to come in now and try to make a deal. Now, in prosecutions like this, the game is that you get someone who's vulnerable and who you can absolutely thoroughly nail. And that's going to bring me to security guards in a moment. And you lean on them for somebody higher up. And of course, what's the biggest fish in the world? It's Donald Trump. Now, the British may not care about getting Donald Trump. We don't know what level is going on here. But these arrests were not made without the king having said no one is above the law regarding his brother, and issuing a statement after the arrest, a very brief statement that ended with the phrase popularized by Elizabeth, who assumed the throne, remember, as a very young woman in 1952, and that's our job is service and duty. So
you make such a good point about the way in which he was brought in. That's and the message that it sends. Yeah. He took so many pictures. In the Epstein file release, the one clear thing is that they're hanging a lot of stuff on Andrew. And I'm wondering if it's a distraction from sort of what you're suggesting, which is that there are other very powerful people who probably were in every bit as deep as Andrew, and maybe including.
That's why I brought up the security guards. Okay. So if you're a security guard, whether it's the U.S. Secret Service or the British Service, your assignment is not to interfere in misconduct by the protectee, as they're called. So if your assignment is a grandchild of President Trump and the kid goes to a rave and is using drugs, none of your business. You're not there to enforce the law. You are there to protect. However, people in those jobs, like everybody else in law enforcement, they have to file reports. They have to keep logs, where they were and what happened, and who was around. And I would say there's an extremely high likelihood that the security details of Andrew, particularly when he was made a government employee as part of a trade mission, which is what the charges are about. They're not about sex trafficking. They're not about child rape. They are about official misconduct by disclosing state secrets connected to trade negotiations, and specifically disclosing them to Jeffrey Epstein. My guess is the security details have already been interviewed. And if you're on those security details and you fudge the entry in a log in order to disguise or hide Prince Andrew being with some 13-year-old girl, government now has leverage over you. One of the things I always tell my students and fellow journalists, never do a single thing that will let anybody get leverage over you, and your life will be a lot better. Nothing may ever happen to you, but nobody can get leverage over you if you don't ever engage in misconduct. So the security people will know who was around him, where he was, when he was. The British authorities may be interested here in national security matters that go beyond this. What other contacts did Andrew have? Who else was he doing business with? Was he like the former ambassador who's doing the same thing, giving Jeffrey Epstein state secrets that Epstein apparently used to profit in the stock market? Is this going to be a threat, a further threat to other people? And that's why I think the way this was done is the Crown prosecutors who had to approve this were sending a message. You think you might be in trouble? You need to come in now. You need to reduce our workload. And if you're good boys and girls and you do that, we will consider, 2 years in prison instead of 20.
You draw the distinction that jumped out at me as well, which is he is being prosecuted not for the misconduct with the 13-year-old, but for the secrets, state secrets that are apparently, it's argued, divulged during his relationship with Epstein.
And that gives a much stronger lever to the Crown prosecutors. First of all, Britain has something called the Official Secrets Act. And under the Official Secrets Act, some of Andrew's conduct may fall. That would absolutely, if they think it falls under that, explain the tough tactics that they applied in arresting him. But you get a lot more leverage when you say national security than when you say child rape. It's just the way the law is. And by the way, let me clarify that in the case of Andrew, I don't think he's been accused yet anyway of 13-year-olds. I think Ms. Giuffre was, when she says she was raped by him, she would have been 16, I believe, under the age of consent. although Megyn Kelly would approve.
Right.
And, and a lot of people are very nervous about all of this today. From the point of view of American citizens, this is going to weaken and lead to challenges about the cover-up that's being run. And earlier this week, the New York Daily News, which I write for occasionally on the opinion pages, said exactly what you've heard me say on the show for years, Mark, that this is not a presidency, this is a criminal organization that's in control of the White House. And they came flat out and said it, and I don't think they'll be the last ones to say it. Finally, we're beginning to get some mainstream news media to step back from, oh, well, it's just politics in a different sort of unusual way, to recognize we have a con man, white collar criminal, and
Yeah, the
his
sane washing is what you're talking about, and you're starting to see that kind of ebb. You're saying there's less
well,
and
and
less
also
of it.
just flat out saying these are criminals. These people,
Sure.
Pam Bondi, the rest of them, they're engaged in criminal conduct. So some likely things will happen. Andrew's defense may at some point try to obtain Epstein files. They're going to want to know what Epstein files the British government has. It may well have files of its own. If they want files that the Trump administration has, is the Trump administration going to honor our obligations to cooperate in law enforcement? I don't think they will, but it'll be an issue. Remember that the Norwegians have charged their former prime minister, their functional equivalent of Donald Trump, with gross corruption for his dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. Financial dealings, not child rape, financial dealings. But lots of other people who were around the former Prince Andrew really need to be very worried right now about what is up for them. And we don't know what British intelligence may have that they're not sharing in these matters, but you can be sure that every lever the Crown prosecutors can bring, they will. They would not have done this, and they would not have done it the way they did it unless they intend to have a big rack deer on the shelf. They're not interested in having a little mouse on their desks in a plastic case. They are looking for big game.
The British were always out in front on this, weren't they, David? Like when they stripped him of his title, it seemed as though they were clearly, as a result of their investigations, privy to stuff that had yet to sort of break here in America the way it has now.
Well, I think what most likely happened there is, and years from now people will start talking about this, is a high likelihood that Keir Starmer, the prime minister, or someone else told the king, who they report to regularly, he's the head of state, what was going on. And if not, Charles, whatever you may think of him, he's not stupid. He's a very sophisticated man. Somebody told him, maybe even his brother told him, yeah, if they want to prosecute me, they've got me. So he was kicked out of the royal family as a preemptive move, in the same way that you get a police officer gets arrested for murdering somebody for profit. The first thing the cops do is fire them, so that it will always say former police officer. That's a self-protective move. I mean, I don't think there's any objection to that. That's what you should do. You should separate yourself. And his statement today, the king's statement, or I guess technically it was the monarchy's statement, it doesn't offer a single word of sympathy or support for Andrew. They have just left him out to dry.
Well, as I was saying, there's so many compromising photographs. I mean, it's like you can just, you can see it.
Yeah.
And
in his case, we have a bunch of photographs that per se don't indicate anything that's a crime, but they sure smell.
Ex-Prince Andrew, I have to read this, I'm sorry, it's hard on my screen, arrested on his birthday. Trump tweeting witch hunt while dodging the same Epstein spotlight. Yeah. Royals fall, billionaires stall, is what Wes in Florida is saying. Yeah.
Mark, what can Donald do at this point? He has made his line in the sand. Originally, I'm going to make everything public. I'll do that. And then he backs up and says, well, I don't want to embarrass my friends. Now his position is it's all a hoax. It's a witch hunt. It never happened. There are people stupid enough in America to believe that and to go with it and who will justify it. And there are people indeed who will not be offended with what Jamie Raskin said the other day. He went into the FBI facility where we know now that the administration was capturing all your keystrokes so they would know what you looked at, which is totally improper. But apart from that, he said that he found girls as young as 10 and a mention of a girl who's 9. Remember Megyn Kelly, the Fox News host? Well, I'm not approving this, but come on, these girls were like 15. This isn't like they were 5-year-olds or 10-year-olds. Well, now we know there are 9 and 10-year-olds. I'm waiting to see if Megyn Kelly and her other smug friends who defend Trump at every turn start to change their tune. And of course, down the road, if we get evidence, not just smoke and suspicion, but solid evidence that Donald Trump was raping girls as young as 12 and 13, getting hand jobs from them and hit one in the face because he wasn't satisfied with the oral sex that she gave him. There are going to be people who will say, well, I was always against this. Nobody listened to me, but I was, it's just like everybody in the world says that they said in the fall of 1963 that they voted for John F. Kennedy, who barely won the election. Right. You're going to see a lot of this revisionist history. At the same time, there's a danger out here. I've already gotten today 2 fake images. Very well done. Because, at the moment, I would argue that in terms of fake imagery and fake videos, we're sort of in the Model T Ford stage, but we're going to quickly advance to the Tesla stage. And it'll be harder and harder to do that. And the picture you have up on the screen right now, I think, is very revealing. There's Donald with Melania early in her plastic surgery career. And there's Andrew on the right and Epstein in the background, and Ghislaine Maxwell and an unidentified woman in a white, almost a strapless dress, not quite spaghetti strap sort of dress. And so there's no getting out of the relationship here. And Andrew, one of the things I got asked several times by overseas TV today was, well, would Andrew really talk about other people? And yeah, he's going to rat out people. The reason he got arrested the way he did in part was they put him, like everybody else, in a plain jail cell before they put him under caution. That's the British version of the Miranda. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And they did that to make clear to him that you have any prospect of not going to prison. It's dependent on you giving up everybody we ask about, being absolutely scrupulously honest. And we may still charge you with child rape.
And what's interesting about this, I think, and distinguishes it immensely from what would happen here, is that it's happening in Britain. So the control that Trump has over it and the Trump functionaries may be a bit more limited.
Yeah, I probably won't live long enough to see this, Mark, because I suspect this is 25 years out in the future and I'd have to live to over 100. But someday we'll probably find out that today, there were phone calls placed by Trump minions to try and pressure British intelligence that this would damage intelligence interests of the United States and Britain.
And the relationship between the two countries, probably.
And yes, and that this would cause economic and other harm. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll come out long before then. But just knowing how these things work, that's highly likely to happen. So going forward here, you're not going to hear a lot of news in the near future because of the way the British law works on privacy. Eventually, everything has to come out, but not right here. The next big thing to look for is when and if Andrew is allowed to go home. If he's not allowed to go home, even if this isn't in the public record, it suggests they think he's a flight risk. Now, I don't know where he'd go and somebody would protect him, but if they think he's a flight risk, they can hold him. Normally, they can only hold you for 96 hours. That's 4 days, not calendar days, but by the clock. And after, I think it's 48 hours, British police have to get some approval from higher up to keep holding you. And not greatly unlike our system, except we're most jurisdictions 72 hours. And it will be the effort to get documents. Maybe we will see the Andrew's lawyers try to get material from the estate of Donald Trump, because the estate of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Epstein. When a search warrant is executed and things are taken from your home or your business, The authorities have to give you a detailed inventory, and they then must return everything they don't need that isn't contraband or give you a certified copy. Well, if you have drugs, you're not going to get those back. One of the developments we're going to see before long is the administration will say, we can't show you the videos and the audios because there are ones that show grown men with girls below the age of consent, and to merely look at those images is to commit a felony, a 10-year felony. Now, law enforcement is obviously exempt from that. They have to be. You can't prosecute a case. You can do some redaction to show to a jury, but if you're going to try somebody for that, you're going to have to show the evidence to the jury. But Congress oversees the president. We talk about them as co-equal branches, but Congress makes the rules, Congress appropriates the money, Congress passes the laws, and the executive's position is to essentially be the errand boy of Congress. We've allowed presidents more and more and more power, but at the end of the day, the Constitution is very clear. The president is the commander-in-chief of the military and the errand boy of Congress. And if they try to pull that to say, as I anticipate they will, oh, we can't ever release these, that's contraband, that's where Congress, once the Democrats are in control, can step right in. Among other things, if they want to be super safe, they can pass a law saying for any member of Congress to view these pictures is deemed not to be a violation of law.
I see. Yeah.
And fix that. So a lot's about to happen. This is like you're looking at a big dam, and there's a little stream of water coming out below the water line. Eventually, that dam's going to collapse if that happens and they don't patch it.
So they released him from the police station based on what Albert just flashed up the headline.
They have released him. Okay.
Yeah. So Andrew Pictured leaving police station following arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office. So
I can't imagine where he'd run. So I'm not surprised they released him then, because he'd only hold him as a flight risk. There will be a lot more conversations with this, and no way did Crown prosecutors approve this without total, complete confidence that they had him dead in the water.
Sure. David, I'm seeing this in the chat, and I wanted to ask you about it anyway. So let me just quickly ask you about Iran as it relates to Epstein, okay? As it relates to a wag the dog kind of move on the part of the Trump administration. Can you speak to that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Meaning, is Iran, to the extent that it's a distraction from Epstein, is the likelihood of some military conflict with Iran raised, amplified because of what's going on with Epstein?
Iran is absolutely first and foremost a distraction. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been to the U.S. basically every couple of weeks since Trump returned to office, and he is deeply concerned and wants us to be the muscle to go after Iran. Trump has put more ships in the area, but we do not have ground troops to make an assault. Those ships are not full of hundreds of thousands of Marines, and the Iranians have 1 million people who either are active on duty or have been trained as a military. They have battle-hardened troops from the 8-year war with Iraq, even though it was 30 years ago. They would be senior officers at this point. We're not going to make a land incursion in Tehran. What we can do, and the reason there are 2 aircraft carriers there, is send fighter jets, fighter bombers, missiles, and drones to attack various targets. And Trump may well do that, but he was going to do that if he was anyway, to try and get the Iranians to come to heel. And the Iranians, illegitimate as I think the regime of the Ayatollahs is, they do have a sovereign country. Donald Trump is not, much as he thinks he is, dictator of the world. And the Trump administration has to be very careful, and Netanyahu has to have a great interest in replacing the Ayatollahs who want to take us back to the 9th century, which is a crucial period in the development of Islamic belief and practice. Young Iranians, the median age in Iran is 32. Half of Iranians are younger than 32. They didn't live under the Shah. They've only lived under the Ayatollahs, and they're fed up and they want to get a new government. It's an unstable government right now. If Trump mishandles this, he can assure the Ayatollahs they'll keep their grip on power. if he handles it right, he may be able to topple them, which I think would be a good thing. Although, the devil you don't know could be
Sure.
worse than the devil you do.
Right, when the Shah brutal
Oh,
Shah regime was installed by the U.S., it's not so dissimilar. I mean, right? I mean, there was a
right.
democratic election of Mossadegh.
Mossadegh was democratically elected. He scared the CIA people who had come through World War II. We saw to it he was deposed. And then what happened with the Shah is what happens with all dictators and will happen here in the US if we do not get our democracy back. At some point, he began purging his closest allies. Over in Iraq, after we put Saddam Hussein in power, there was the meeting where he called out the names of his supporters, and you can hear them in the film. They're taken out of the room and shot. And all dictators at some point have to have a purge of their top leadership to enforce discipline to their dictatorial control. And then eventually, because of the hatred that breeds, especially 1, 2, and 3 circles out, if you can get Tim Snyder on, I'm sure he can talk about this much more eloquently than I am. You have to start having firing squads or their functional equivalent. You can have a gulag if you want. You can hang people, but you've got to grab other people to instill fear. Dictatorship requires 2 things. It requires a coterie of people who will support you out of fear and maybe loyalty. And secondly, you need to have an outer ring of people, including just Joe and Joan Sixpack, who are an absolute terrorized that they or their daughter or their son is going to be grabbed and shot simply to enforce the dictator's control. And Donald Trump, if he lives long enough and we do not get out of his dictatorship, he will have to do the same thing. And I'm likely to be one of the people who gets shot early on, not as a loyalist, but as to make a point.
Well, dissenters are already, I think, vulnerable. So
Yeah.
you'd be a lead dissenter. I think.
Yeah.
It's quite a large group of us. But I would also just note on Iran, just as a footnote, that guy you're talking about, the Shah, his son is sort of in the wings, waiting to take over. He'd be the American.
Mark. By the way, you're correct. You would be on the list too. The audience should know that. I should have said that. I apologize. That was bad on my part. It is astonishing to see the guy waiting in the wings, who we are apparently helping to go back to power, is the son of the Shah. My God, really? That's not going to sell with the young people, of whom the Iranians apparently have now acknowledged in various ways that, yes, they have massacred several tens of thousands of Iranians for demonstrating against the government. That's part of that portion of Islam that wants to go back to the 9th century. That's not all Islam. It's a narrow group of people. But remember that MBS, Donald's good friend, who's the dictator in Saudi Arabia, about 12 years ago, had 39 imams, pastors, clerics, rabbis, 39 imams beheaded. Their crime? They publicly prayed for a better government. We're dealing with really vicious people here in terms of their disregard. The problem is we have a president of the United States who has an equal disregard. Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, those people, the word honor is to them meaningless. Duty, meaningless. Service, the 2 words brought up by King Charles, meaningless words.
I am going to, I'm so grateful that you come in for a second visit, and I know our time is short, but I did want to talk to you just quickly because I remember from your writings the way in which Russians acquired real estate from Donald Trump in the form of condos, as I recall, in your one of your books, and they overpaid for these condos. And what's happening now with warehouse acquisition on the Department of Homeland Security's agenda, all of this warehouse acquisition, they are overpaying by 5 and 6x what the actual price of these warehouses. So I'm talking about an acquisition of a warehouse for $120 million that's actually valued at $30 million.
Right.
And
so first
when
of all,
you look to see the ownership, sorry, David, just one last thing. If you look to see the ownership in some cases, it's Russian. These are Russian, the Russian oligarchs with their, it would seem anyway, their hooks into America. And this is a grift.
And some of the others we may find that if you can peel back the layers of ownership, you're going to get to Russians. First of all, there are federal laws to protect us from grossly overpaying. Is a building worth 30 million or 33 million? That's business judgment. 120 million, 150 million for a $30 million building, that's a crime. And so the people doing these deals, just the ordinary folks signing the paperwork, they should be very careful because the next administration may well prosecute them, and certainly should not maybe just functionaries, but the ones who went along because they didn't want to lose their job. Um, it's very clear that the Trump administration is not building these to deport people. They can move people out of the country quite quickly. They are building these as detention or concentration camps. One of the members of Congress went into one of the camps. There's a law that says that members of Congress can show up unannounced. They must be shown any ICE detention facility on the inside. They've been being rejected, but one member got in and he came out and said, this may have been a lawyer actually for somebody who was there, that literally the men in this facility were packed like sardines. There was no room to walk around. You were just shoulder to shoulder. You couldn't lie down. The conditions were utterly inhumane. In those kind of conditions, if somebody appears in that group who has measles, which is transmitted by air and is incredibly infectious, 90% of the people there who either haven't had the measles or haven't had a vaccine, they're going to get the measles. And some of them are going to die, some are going to go blind, some are going to become sterile. All sorts of things will happen. Measles is a really terrible disease that the Trump administration wants to make an option for childhood vaccination. The facilities that they're building, they're cages and they're for long-term holding. And of course, people in these small towns are overwhelmed because if you have a town of 8,000 people and you suddenly bring 8,000 people into one of these warehouses, the draw on your water system means you're not going to be able to water your lawn. You may even be able to wash your dishes. Your sewer system is going to be overrun.
And that's the pushback. What you're talking about is the pushback from these communities, exactly, that their infrastructure isn't sufficient for this stuff.
And the senior senator from Mississippi, Wicker, who lives in a small town, has written a letter in no uncertain terms. You will not do this in the town where I live, little tiny small town, and don't do it anywhere in the whole state of Mississippi. Talk about not in my backyard, NIMBY thinking. But people pay attention here. Donald Trump has been very clear. He intends to arrest people he doesn't like. He intends to, he would regard you and me and most of the Democrats in Congress as traitors. He calls people like us that all the time. And he obviously goes around saying, and the penalty for being a traitor is execution. Just to be technical for a moment, you cannot commit treason right now. We are not in a state of war, and the Constitution only allows that in a state of war. You can commit treasonous crimes. There's crimes that still cover that. He has said he intends to strip naturalized citizens of their citizenship if he can find anything they've done. And they've literally arrested people for making a right turn without the turn signal. And when it turned out the case was thrown out because the cop lied, the dash cam or video cam, body cam showed that the turn signal was on, they deported the person anyway. He has said he wants to take Americans and deport them. Technically, you can't deport an American. You can remove an American. But he's going to do this. He's telling you he's going to do it. He got Congress to give him this unbelievable budget that is bigger for Border Patrol and ICE and that group of federal law enforcement agencies than all the rest of them put together. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's all right there. However you want to evaluate it, if you follow the money or you just follow what's said, it's all right there. And as you said, just this word out of the administration just in the last day, they want to aggressively re-screen those who've already been green-lit to be in this country legally.
Right. I was listening this morning to a woman who, she and her husband and their 1-month-old baby are on their way to a government office to get papers for the child. ICE blocks the car, smashes the driver's window, pulls the father out, leaves the mother and the 1-month-old baby in the car. The source of this story is the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. And while I'm no fan of Kathy Hochul, she also has a reputation for being a straight shooter. So I'm sure she had good reason to talk about this case. People, you really need to pay attention, and you need, and look, they plan to interrupt the elections. They plan to have law enforcement. There's a federal law that law enforcement's not supposed to be within 1,000 feet of a polling place in any way that might intimidate voters. You think they're going to pay attention to that? I don't think so. I think
it's a desperate struggle they're in.
Yes.
This election represents a real threat, and a threat to power. And so, I agree. David, thank you for making more time for us today. Really cool to talk to you about all of this stuff. And the echoes of what you've written, that's why when I was reading the warehouse stuff, I thought, oh my God, David wrote about this in The Making of Donald Trump, I want to say, and a couple of other texts. It was quite clear that the same dance is being done now with taxpayer money, And
Mark, if you go back and rewatch the TV series The West Wing, one of the astonishing things about it is it's the same issues today. And that's because Americans have this belief that we solve problems. No, in a democracy, we manage problems. And right now, we're mismanaging badly.
Now let me blindside you. Last thing. Ask David K. Johnston about the recent request for a social media order by Trump. All Democrats and liberal social media records, if you have ever said anything against Trump / the GOP so this is what you're saying, David. I guess that this is coming.
This is the very definition of a First Amendment violation. The framers of our Constitution were very worried about an executive who'd be out of control, about a king, even a temporary king. And the First Amendment is there to protect your right of speech, your right of religion or non-religion, your right of press, your right to assemble peaceably to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Donald doesn't want that. He wants to get rid of that. He doesn't believe in it. He has said many times, going back to before he ever said he was running for office, which is 2000. He's talked about as far back as 87, but I mean in a serious way, that it should be against the law to write things about me that I don't approve of. That's as Stalinistic, as Maoist as you can get. And people need to recognize he's doing what he said. The one thing I say for Donald is when he plans to commit a crime, when he intends to commit a crime against the Constitution, he only hides the things that he needs to for his personal issue, like whatever video, audio, and photographic evidence there is of him with underage girls, if any. But for everything else, he tells you what he's doing. And the reason is people go, well, he couldn't be a crime if he's telling you that.
Right.
Sure, it could if you're stupid enough not to understand. So gotta go. Take
no
care.
No sleight of hand with Donald Trump. Thank you, David K. Johnston. We'll see you.
For more than 50 years, the hardworking Americans at Coosa Steel have poured out their sweat and blood and tears to turn into what, look, you wanted to take raw material and you wanted to take beautiful metal and you wanted to turn it into the highest quality steel racks and plates in the business, all stamped with those really beautiful words. You don't see it too much, but now you do again, made in the USA, right? And this company prospered and grew from humble beginnings in a Georgia manufacturing. What happened is you became, in a very short while, a Georgia manufacturing giant. But then you watch your core business start to fade. I just spoke to your great owner, and he's great, but he got hit by stupid politicians, basically, making specialized steel tire racks dwindle from 2 bustling shifts to 6 days a week down to 1 shift, 1 hour, 1 hour a week. Then you went back up to 2 days, then you went back to 3 days, then you went back to 1 day, then you went down to 1 hour, because all the business was going to China and other countries from outside. And it wasn't only here, it was other plants also. I assume your friends likewise were having the same problem. Your jobs were being stolen as foreign nations dumped their subsidized products. Don't forget China and these other countries, they pay for it. It's all subsidized. You don't get too much subsidy. But they dropped the subsidized products on our market to try and put Americans out of business, and that's what they were doing. You're lucky you have a man that is so proud of this place. Kept it going, barely kept it going. Wasn't easy. You're a lucky guy. But now, thanks to the fact that we got elected on November 5th, and thanks to what I call the Trump tariffs, business at Coosa Steel is booming again. We just spoke, it's booming. And in October, you received your first large order for tire racks since 2014. It was a big, massive order. In fact, this great man right here thought that they made a mistake. He said it can't be possible. No, it's called tariffs. I said, my favorite word in the whole dictionary is tariff, and I got in trouble with, look at all the fake news back there. Look at them. I got in trouble. No, I got in trouble with them because I said, tariff is my favorite word in the whole dictionary. They said, what about family? What about God? What about wife, children? I said, all right, it's my fifth favorite word. Now I'm okay. They've treated me okay since I did that. They didn't like it when, but it's my fifth favorite word in the dictionary. You're back, you're producing at full speed, 2 shifts a day, and he's going to 3 shifts a day, 6 days a week. And you've got a backlog now that's 7 months long. What a difference. From a couple of hours a week to 7 months long. And it's all because you finally have a president who put America first. That's what it is. But it's also because I imposed powerful 50% tariffs on foreign steel where they were coming in and dumping crap all over our country. I ended every one of the Biden-era exemptions, and on August 18th, I added new tariffs to cover 400 derivative products, including steel racks, which is what you make. So I say congratulations, and what a great comeback. This is a comeback that 2 years ago, right, you were almost, I don't want to say out of business, but you're almost out of business. I guess he said you can say it. You were close. He was borderline. Started telling his wife, let's have tuna fish tonight, darling. Forget about the steak. But stories like this companies are right now playing out in cities all around the country, towns, villages, all over the country. And to think I have to be in the United States Supreme Court for many, many months waiting for a decision on tariffs. Without tariffs, this country would be in such trouble right now. Without tariffs, this country would be like your company was 2 years ago. What a difference it made. And you know who brought the cases against us? People that are China-oriented, people that have business in China that want to rip us off and keep ripping us off, and the tariffs had stopped us. And not only China, other countries too. People from other countries like Canada and others, they sue us. Canada has ripped us off for years. Not anymore, they're not. And I'm waiting for a decision from the Supreme Court. Can you imagine? We have to wait. I mean, I just heard the story today, and I've told it 1,000 times. I don't think I've ever heard it any better. I even took him back to the fake news where he related the story, that he was in serious trouble. There was no business. There was no business anywhere. How was this place 2 or 3 years ago? It was not just here, the whole area. It was a disaster. And now it's vibrant. And we have to justify this because people come from other countries because they ripped us off for 50 years. And now we're doing the same thing to them. And we're being very modest about it, right, Howard? We're being very modest about it. We'd go a lot further if I want to. Because what they've done to us, other countries, what they've done, they almost put us out of business. And I'll tell you, if I didn't win this election, and if you had a moron like Kamala or a moron like Sleepy Joe Biden, if you had these people back, our country would have been finished. We wouldn't have had a country. So just yesterday, I was visited by the CEO of the drug company Novartis, and his name is Baz, first name, great guy. And he came into the White House to see our great chief of staff, who happens to be with us. Where's Susie? Susie's with us someplace. She is great. First female chief of staff and the best chief of staff. And she wanted to bring him in. It's a big, very big company, all based outside of this country. And she wanted to bring him in, so I said, come on. I said, hello, how are you doing? How's it going? Sir, I'm building 11 plants in the United States. I said, that's a lot. How many do you have? None. But we're moving almost all our business into the United States. And I said, why are you doing that? Tariffs. Tariffs! Can you believe it? It said tariffs. And I got to be before a court. Can you believe it? This is like men playing in women's sports, transgender for everybody. I have a new one to add, voter ID. The Democrats don't want to give us voter ID because they want to cheat. The only way they can cheat is if they, look, we can stop them so easy. You know what they say? We don't want voter ID because it's racist. Okay? That's a good one. It's racist. No. I'll tell you what, when they look at the polls, 95% of the people want voter ID. Then you have proof of citizenship. So we want voter ID. We want proof of citizenship. You can vote. Let's prove that you're an American. So please, proof of citizenship. They're fighting that. They're fighting that. And then we don't want to have mail-in ballots where they're mailed in from all parts of the place. Mail-in ballots are crooked as hell. We're the only country in the world that use this type of mail-in ballot, the only country in the world. I'll tell you what, Republicans have to win this one. We'll never lose a race. For 50 years, we won't lose a race. We want voter ID. We want proof of citizenship. And we don't want mail-in ballots except for the military far away, except for people that are ill, disabled, or people that are away. Even for a vacation, we'll be generous, okay? Other than that, we don't want mail-in ballots because mail-in ballots say cheat. Without tariffs, what would you do? You know what? Everybody would be bankrupt, everybody. The whole country would be bankrupt. And I have to wait for this decision. I've been waiting.
Okay, so obviously our president is trying to set things up. He's setting the table for no mail-in ballots because, of course, we know that the GOP is having problems with the country. Very upset with what's going on in how the Trump administration is doing business, and it's projected that the GOP is going to it's going to be a big wave, and it won't be theirs. An upcoming election. So he's trying to, as we know, stop this from happening. And so we're going to fact check some of the things that he says real quick because we're going to close the show. It says he says that tariffs. He keeps talking about tariffs. Okay, but here it's been reported that. Here's a fact check, concise list of the most important points from Trump's speech at Costa Steel with citations. Trump claimed tariffs revived Costa Steel, taking it from near collapse to a 7-month backlog. A narrative he repeated during his visit saying, quote, tariffs brought it here, unquote. He asserted that 50% tariffs of foreign steel stopped dumping and boosted domestic production, a claim echoed by industry groups like the American Iron and Steel Institute, which noted a 3.1% production increase in 2025. Trump criticized the Supreme Court for reviewing his tariffs, blaming, quote, China oriented, unquote, people and Canadian interests for lawsuits, though the legal challenges are ongoing and not solely tied to foreign actors. He promoted his quote, Save America Act pushing voters' ID and proof of citizenship, despite no evidence of widespread mail-in ballot fraud, a claim repeatedly debunked by election experts. Trump claimed 18 trillion in investment commitments under his policies, though this figure likely includes private sector announcements, not direct government spending, and is not independently verified. He touted tax cuts, including no tax on Social Security for seniors, a policy that passed Congress but faces criticism from Democrats over health care impacts in Georgia. So that's what fact finding on on what Trump had to say. Um, and we're going to be back here tomorrow for an update on February the 20th, 2026. We're going to keep reporting this. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that subscription icon bell, and share the video. Once again, I'm Ted King, reporting for the most dangerous combat sport in the world, American politics, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.
The Epstein class has been ruling us for decades, but no longer. Everybody associated with seeking to cover up the truths in the Epstein affair, everyone associated with trying to make people look at Russia instead of Israel and the CIA, everybody who ever cavorted with Jeffrey Epstein, took his hospitality, took his money, took his plane to his island, and defiled the innocence of young girls and boys, will never work again. They'll never work again unless you're all stupid, unless you all are prepared to be ruled by the Epstein class. They'll never work again. Donald Trump's acting as if none of this is happening. He keeps giving press briefings. I mean, is he ever doing anything other than giving press briefings? Does Donald Trump ever actually sit down and think? I'm not going to suggest that he sits down and read, because we all know he's never read a book in his life. Never written one either, but that's another matter. Donald Trump, in his incessant, ceaseless press briefings, is acting like this, none of this is happening, and hoping that the complicit media, which is so utterly compromised by the whole Epstein affair, will go along with his pretense that none of this is happening. But on social media, there is a deluge, a tsunami of releases, of analysis,